All right, jumping straight into gold. This has just been the trade for the last 2 weeks, and that really, it's just been the massive outperformer, and that it's broken out on so many different sort of time frames, and that ever since this was the start of it all, this was the NFP. We had this sort of negative divergence sort of happening. We said above 1830 would be the technical break. We got that good close up there, the big reversal off this sort of large, strong sort of support. I mean, last time it hit this support was the start of the run that went to the all-time highs, albeit it got a little bit choppy up around the top end here. I was saying that sort of like, I would expect this to come back, but this is really firing up very fast. And I mean, you can see this large channel here. It's sort of, once it sort of popped out of this, it sort of had a bit of a think about it. I've got to clean these charts up. They're a little bit scrappy at the moment. But this sort of light blue line here, obviously breakout, bit of a back test, and it's just kept on going. So I've been trying to sort of buy on these pullbacks, as you can see, a couple of times, but it's just not giving any sort of offers, really, because each time it sort of breaks out, you look for it to sort of get that deeper sort of pullback. You take your profit, wait for the pullback, and you just end up buying back in anyway. So we can get rid of these ones, clean it up a little bit. But anyway, so basically where we're at now, we're tapping into this major breakout zone. So if you've been watching anything that I've been sort of putting together for the last couple of weeks and that, you see that 1980, you can see how heavily sort of impactful this zone has been previously. And this is where we expect it to actually finally come to a little bit of a halt. I mean, given how it has been running and how it sort of just keeps firing up more and more, um, who knows? This could easily just sort of push through with further sort of escalations, and now sort of like Israel saying that they're getting ready. Like I know they've been saying for a couple of days, but apparently they've sort of made more of an effort now to sort of say that come the next couple of days when the aid is going to go into Gaza, that they may possibly sort of come in on foot as well, and they're sort of like telling the armed forces down there, sort of you're going to see Gaza from the inside soon, or something to this effect. Um, so that stuff aside, that could obviously sort of push things, and I do still think we've got 2,000 plus on the cards. As I said though, if you take out the war and you just look at this from a sort of a chart basis, apart from the fact this is just absolutely ripped up the top side here, um, you've got these areas where the market was like, okay, let's sell it, let's sell it, let's sell it. So it's only natural, as we're seeing here, as it taps into this zone, that it is getting a bit of a pushback. I mean, this is what, a 4 hour candle. We've still got another hour and a bit on it. It is overbought, but still sort of it's got a little bit of room to move to be sort of redlining up the top and that, and certainly could sort of push up a little bit more. But yeah, 1980 has really come thick and fast here. And if we have a look at this sort of last drop down here, if we actually put this one up for the 127, yeah, we can see that the 127 retracement from this last massive drop down is coming in 1985. So again, I mean, I'm not a big one to sort of trade the 127 and that, but there are people that do it. And as you can see, it comes in very close in line with this sort of resistance zone as well. So I do expect it to sort of like halt a little bit. Typically gold, I give a $5 range in Asia. But as you've seen, like with a couple of these candles recently, was this one? Maybe it was this one down over here. So yeah, we're starting to get these sort of larger moves that are actually popping through the Asian session. They're just not waiting. I mean, you can see how shallow these pullbacks are. So at best, maybe you get a little bit of a consolidation, maybe a little bit of a sort of drift sideways through here. But I would say definitely, I'm still looking at 2,000 plus on top of the cards, on the card, sorry, for the top side. And yeah, probably not too far away either for at least above 2,000. I did see a tweet earlier sort of saying that it's actually hitting all-time highs on a bunch of different currencies. So like against the euro, the yen, the Aussie dollar, these kind of things, and gold against the US dollar, which is the one that obviously we're trading here, um, is sort of the one that is sort of lagging a little bit in respect to the others. So I think there's definitely on the cards that it's sort of at least is going above 2,000 in the short term. So shallow pullbacks seem to be the play, and then sort of see where we can sort of try and sort of build a bit of position or sort of catch that next leg pushing up. DXY. So this was the trade yesterday to see that downside that we were calling. So as you can see, we sort of this is where we opened yesterday. We had that tiny little gap down, and then a sort of slow grind up. Had a bit of a sort of negative divergence, as you can see here, sort of playing out. So this is sort of coming down here. Yeah, so this negative divergence on this sort of push up here. So although we were sort of technically coming to those new highs, the selling wasn't supporting it. And as the Euro session opened, we just saw this. I think this was Euro session here, sold off, push back up. It just clipped and closed this weekly gap. So depending on where you sort of like, of course, different platforms even have it to a couple of different cents in that. But you know what I mean? Where it actually closed that last candle, that's where it opened. So here we go at the weekly close. Came up here, tipped it by sort of like a hair, and then just went bang and sort of dropped down with it all. So yeah, after that, just bang, sold off, sold off, sold off. This was the target that we were looking for to get underneath with the close underneath, and then as you can see, a bit of a drift down on some of these lower levels, and then back down to this main support level that we've just sort of hit down here around this 106 zone. This is the one that we sort of are probably looking to sort of go down underneath to really test the major zone here, 105.60 to 105.70. That's our neckline. If this is still to be a bit of a sort of head and shoulders, I guess it'd be head and shoulders with like a double shoulder on this side though. But if that were the case, then this would still be the neckline. I would say that you probably still give that same measured move, even though I had the second sort of flare up. It wasn't quite as a nice sort of neat shoulder as the first one on the left, but this double side over here. But regardless of that, you could still consider this a bit of a range play. And this is what I've been saying, that I expect that this is the scenario that we're going to get a lot of choppy sideways action. I don't see any sort of fundamental reason why you're just going to start to sort of sell off US dollar when they're going into war, basically. They've just issued some travel warning for the entire world. So yeah, I think sort of things are certainly heating up. There was some sort of talk about they intercepted some missiles or something coming from Jordan and supposedly sort of targeted towards Israel, like one of their sort of carrier ships intercepted them. But yeah, it's certainly not looking like a great sort of situation, and it doesn't look like it's going to pass very, very quickly. And this is what's going to drive gold over 2,000. This is what's going to keep the US dollar elevated, despite everything and all the gains that it's already had over the last sort of 3 months. We're just seeing it just almost sort of coming online now. Pretty flat sort of open, as you can see. There's no real sort of gaps to talk about to give us any more of a direction. If we can go down under those wicks, I would say that's a fair call to say headline support's down there for DXY. Alright, that's fine. Yeah, top side, look, I mean, obviously sort of like if you have a look at these highs here and the highs that we sort of booked in yesterday when we closed that weekly gap, they've come in marginally lower. So, the buying power sort of just wasn't enough. And obviously this sell-off is quite substantial through the second half of Euro session and of course the US session. There were some sort of remarks from Powell last night. I haven't seen them too closely, but it was something along the lines of, again, the same sort of story, not ruling out further rate hikes and that down the road. But for whatever reason, they didn't like that. Well, the US dollar didn't. And maybe this was a little spike back up from it all. But certainly something was happening sort of through this candle here to sort of really drive it down. So yeah, it's still sort of a bit of a sideways chop. I want to see sort of down under here to see this test of the neckline, but this is the major one. If they could sort of get down under and close this sort of 105, sort of 30, I'll put an alert down here as well. I don't think this is going to be coming quite soon, but still, may as well chuck an alert in it now. DXY. if we can get that alert going off and sort of like a push down here and a close, you need that close underneath, then we could be looking sort of a further sort of drop down and sell off in the US dollar. This again coincides with with gold sort of moving up as well. So gold and DXY, they have a very typically inverse relationship, and I'd say 90% of the time it's quite strong to be inverse. However, there are times in which they both run, and I guess subsequently both sort of can sell off. But I would say 90% of the time, they do have that good correlation of being pretty strongly inverse to each other, and that 10% is the time that snaps people out. But that is only 10%, and that 10% will revert back to their normal 90%, and that's when sort of you're going to get these sort of divergences, and you're going to get opportunities basically. So if we can sort of see gold and US dollar both appreciate. Well, gold hasn't been appreciating so much, but it's certainly been holding its ground because it is a safe haven on paper, technically. It's just that gold is the chosen sort of safe haven, along with sort of Swiss franc and that at the moment. But in regards to gold and DXY, gold's certainly the chosen one given the most recent sort of scenario. If we can start to see that flip back to its normal inverse relationship, and we can start to see gold continue to appreciate, that's going to drive US dollar down. For the time being, US dollar's not going down as gold flies up. Typically, you could see in a normal scenario, you would see US dollar down at these levels while gold's been running so hard. But because given all the sort of geopolitical stuff going on, they're both the safe haven. So, US dollar's just been holding its ground while gold's been going up. As soon as that goes back to its normal inverse relationship, gold so much money of the market into gold and continuing to pour into gold, it's got to come from somewhere. And US dollar is going to be where it comes from. And that's going to give us that sell down in DXY. So I think, again, this is another thing that's just lining up that as soon as sort of like, US dollar doesn't maintain its sideways push and you start to see it sell off, people are going to be thinking, okay, well, I'm getting rid of my US dollars. Where am I going to put that money? I mean, maybe they put it into the market, equities. I don't think so, but they could. So you may see a bit of an appreciation there, but most likely, if this whole sort of war continues and progresses on, they're going to look for safe havens still. Gold's the chosen safe haven out of US dollar into gold. So that's going to push gold up to sort of retesting those all-time highs as well. So yeah, short term sort of still sort of kind of grinding sideways. Look, this could still, like I said, sort of like fly back up here because you can kind of call this its sort of short term range. Although it sort of did come in a little bit low just on this one here, this high. You could even sort of like drag this out. We'd have to sort of say and just call this a bit of an overshoot. I don't think it's really fair to say that though. So I'm going to say it booked in a lower high here, and it's still coming down. And as you've seen with the videos that I've been doing, I've been looking downside pushes on DXY, and generally the morning gap is going to give us a pretty good idea about where our direction is going to be. And this morning we're not really sort of seeing too much, maybe a little bit of a gap up, but obviously it's been sold into straight away. So we're just going to have to sort of see how that sort of plays out. Comes online in 2 minutes. Quickly flopping across. So we had Aussie. Aussie's still trying to stay in there. As you can see, it had this heavy sell down once it broke this 4-hour channel. It's trading quite technical, quite strong with the technical at the moment, at least. Like, breaks the channel, continues down, forms this channel. Like, where are we? Okay, so kind of miss this one here, but this kind of nice sort of channel that it's sort of getting towards here, breaks the channel, breaks out. So yeah, it's not doing anything of note at the moment. A couple of things to sort of take notice of though is this is a third attempt down at this level. I was saying this being one. Where are we at? This being one attempt down here. This is 2 attempts. And this is 3 attempts down here. And this attempt also, as you can see, these ones are pretty much flat on it, right in that support zone. This latest attempt yesterday didn't actually quite get down to that zone. So buyers are starting to step up, only marginally, of course, but that is something to note of, I suppose. But you can, as I said, this is another idea. You're seeing these sort of blowouts, moves around here. And this is what I was saying. It always overshoots the handle just a touch. So 90s, what do we get down to here? 94, 95 or so. That would have provided a pretty decent sort of little entry. Excuse me, for that pop back up and for a 60 point run to the top side. So at the moment, still really grinding sideways. Main sort of theme is moving down, but the fact that you've got this triple bottom forming here, you've got a bit of a triangle sort of playing out. It's giving us some pretty good sort of breakout levels and breakout lines. And again, US dollar, if it can sell down, Aussie's going to appreciate a little bit. I don't know how much the whole sort of war factor sort of is playing into it because obviously typically Aussie being a risk asset, you'd expect it to sort of sell off. It's held its ground reasonably well. I mean, obviously some pretty bad sort of sell downs, but it was selling down prior to all this stuff happening. So it's not sort of like, okay, the war's gone in, it's dropped another 300 points. Realistically, as you can see here, this is where the war opened. It actually sort of, for a brief period, sort of pushed up, and it's only really, where's this? At 63.80. It's only 60 points down from where the war started, and it's just been chopping sideways. So seems mainly sort of unaffected, and possibly, because it is so far away from all the conflict and all this kind of sort of stuff, it may sort of help it to be not so affected by it all. But still, for now, we're coming into this like little sort of triangle pointed end here. So I'd expect a little bit more sort of turbulence through here while sort of the market decides what it wants to do with the US dollar, because of course, that's the main sort of driver with it all. China had a bit of a fly up overnight, testing these top zones here. So this is interesting. Like, I think that you can pretty much say that this head and shoulders is obsolete now. Like, it's broken through this previous high over here. So we'll sort of drag something across here, see if we can sort of put any sort of limit on the top of it here. But, the buyers, we know that they're down here. We know that their sellers are here. Quite frankly, this is probably the PBOC that sort of came in and smashed the market down there, and it could be again here. We did sort of say the other day, China had a whole bunch of sort of great, seemingly positive data come out for it, but it didn't do much for it at all. Within an hour, I think, or maybe a couple of hours, it did 100% reversal. This was this on a daily here, obviously, but you can see the wick down and it has just pushed back up and continued. So yeah, the one's certainly under pressure at the moment, and it's really coming up to sort of test these big breakout lines. If we do get a break of this zone, I would expect still you got this nice sort of wedge sort of pattern sort of happening. It does have a little bit of a topside move to it all though, so yeah, that's something to sort of watch out for. And of course, that's going to put pressure on Aussie. Going across to copper. Copper still realistically just ranging. It had that little push down. Could have been short covering. Could have been sort of market saying, "Hey, look, we're happy to buy it from down here." However, they've driven it back up, but really, it's just a tussle sideways at the moment. There's nothing to note. Yeah, we still need to sort of get this break above here to sort of see any sort of form of recovery. That's 340 target if we can break. It's a 340 target on break. So this was that wick that sort of shot down. Again, it's just churning sideways. So there's not really too much you can say, even from a sort of technical standpoint. It's sort of not even respecting the line so much. It's sort of coming up, breakout, back in, test, breakout, boom. Like, we got nothing really worth sort of doing with copper here for the moment. Anyway, that's it from me this morning. Just a quick little update.